The airport was buzzing with travelers, but at one small check-in counter, a scene was unfolding that no one expected. A young student, clutching her backpack nervously, was being pushed and scolded by airline staff for reasons she couldn't understand. Her protests were polite but ignored, and the situation quickly escalated. People whispered, some filmed with their phones, while others looked away, unsure what to do. The student's face reflected confusion, fear, and frustration all at once. She had done nothing wrong, yet here she was, being treated harshly in front of a crowd. Just when it seemed like there was no way out, the atmosphere shifted. The sound of confident footsteps echoed through the terminal, turning heads. A woman in a sharp suit appeared, her presence commanding attention without a word. It didn't take long for people to notice the resemblance. This was no ordinary traveler. She was the CEO of a major corporation, and more importantly, she was the young student's aunt. Whispers filled the air as staff froze, unsure how to react. What happened next would completely change the course of the day, leaving everyone stunned. How would the CEO handle the situation? And what would it mean for her niece's journey? The answer is more surprising than anyone could imagine. The CEO's eyes scanned the scene with a calm intensity that made the airline staff shift uncomfortably. She stepped closer to her niece, who was trembling slightly, holding onto her boarding pass as if it were a lifeline. What's going on here? The CEO asked, her voice steady but carrying a weight that made everyone listen. The staff stammered, explaining rules and policies, but their words sounded hollow compared to the tension in the air. The student looked up at her aunt, relief and awe mixing in her eyes. She had always admired her aunt from afar, hearing stories of her success and leadership, but seeing her in person, taking control so effortlessly, was overwhelming. It was as if the entire airport had shifted. The noise, the crowds, even the harsh fluorescent lights seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of expectation. Passengers nearby whispered, trying to piece together the connection between the young student and the powerful woman confronting the staff. Questions swirled. Why was this student being singled out? What kind of influence did her aunt hold that could change the situation so quickly? Every second stretched, tension thickening the air, as everyone waited, uncertain of how the confrontation would unfold. The airline staff exchanged nervous glances, clearly unsure how to proceed. One of the agents tried to justify their actions, pointing to the rules about luggage, weight, and student identification. The CEO's expression remained unreadable, but the sharp edge in her voice made it clear she wasn't going to accept excuses. I don't care what your policy says, she said firmly. She is my niece, and she will board this flight safely. Meanwhile, other passengers began murmuring, some recording the incident on their phones. Social media posts were already forming in real time, as bystanders debated whether the staff was being unfair or if the CEO was overstepping. The student's anxiety spiked. She didn't want trouble for anyone, but the presence of her powerful aunt made her both feel protected and more self-conscious than ever. Back at the counter, the manager arrived, trying to mediate, but the tension only grew. Questions emerged from every direction. Was this really about luggage rules? Or had someone misjudged the student based on appearances? Another passenger, a fellow student, whispered a warning about previous incidents where staff had treated travelers unfairly, adding layers to the uncertainty. That as the CEO's eyes met the staff again, the unspoken challenge hung in the air. Every heartbeat felt louder, every movement scrutinized, and the airport seemed to hold its breath. The situation teetered on the edge. One wrong move could escalate it completely. The air at the check-in counter had grown thick with tension, every movement amplified under the watchful eyes of travelers and staff alike. The student clutched her backpack tighter, her knuckles white, as whispers spread through the terminal. Cameras discreetly lifted, capturing the unfolding drama. She could feel the stares piercing through her, some sympathetic, others judgmental, and a pang of embarrassment mixed with fear churned in her stomach. The CEO stepped closer, her presence commanding silence. She spoke calmly but with authority, asking pointed questions about why her niece was being treated so roughly. The staff fumbled, offering half-hearted explanations about security concerns and policy enforcement, but their uncertainty was clear. Every excuse sounded weaker under the CEO's gaze, and the murmurs from the crowd grew louder. Feeding the tension in the terminal, passengers began to whisper among themselves, some frustrated, others fascinated. As speculation spread, some wondered if this was a case of misunderstanding, while others sensed a deeper injustice at play. The student's heart pounded, and she could feel the weight of everyone's attention pressing down on her. Then, the manager called for an urgent private discussion, motioning the CEO aside, but she refused, standing her ground. The standoff intensified, with the staff visibly flustered and the crowd holding its breath. Every second dragged, anticipation building. Something was about to happen, and no one could predict how explosive the moment would be. Just as the tension reached its peak, a new complication surfaced. One of the airline staff, visibly nervous, glanced toward a computer screen and muttered something under her breath. The CEO noticed immediately and stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "What is that?" she demanded, her voice calm but sharp. Cutting through the murmur of the crowd, the staff hesitated, then admitted that there was a system alert flagging the student's ticket. Everyone froze. The student looked at her aunt, panic rising in her chest. She had done everything by the book, paid her fees, and submitted her documents. How could there be a problem now? The whispers of bystanders grew louder, speculation flying in every direction. Could there be a mistake? Or was someone intentionally blocking her from boarding? Meanwhile, the CEO's presence only intensified the conflict. Passengers craned their necks to watch, some recording, some whispering about corporate power and influence. The staff exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to follow policy or fear the consequences of denying the CEO's niece. The student's hands shook as she tried to explain, but her words faltered. With every second, the tension multiplied. The alert on the screen seemed like an invisible wall, threatening to derail everything. The airport held its breath, waiting for the next move. While the crowd's anticipation created a pressure so thick it felt almost suffocating, the stage was set for a confrontation no one would forget. The CEO's gaze never wavered as she leaned closer to the staff, her calm authority cutting through the tension like a knife. "Show me the alert," she said, pointing to the screen. The staff hesitated, then reluctantly pulled up the message. Everyone around could see it now. The system had flagged the student's ticket not because of a mistake, but due to a name mismatch caused by a clerical error. The CEO didn't hesitate. With a few swift commands on her tablet, she corrected the issue herself, her efficiency leaving the staff and onlookers stunned. The student blinked in disbelief as her aunt smiled gently. "It's okay now," she said softly. Relief washed over her, mingling with awe at the woman who had just taken control of a situation that seemed impossible moments before. The staff, now red-faced, apologized profusely, realizing their mistake and the overreaction that had caused unnecessary distress, just when it seemed the ordeal was over. A new surprise emerged. As the student and her aunt turned to head to security, a message pinged on the CEO's phone. It was an urgent email from the airline headquarters, revealing that the system alert had not been random. It was part of a deliberate internal test to see how staff would handle difficult passengers. The revelation stunned the CEO and the passengers alike, turning what felt like a personal victory into a glimpse at a larger, hidden world of policies, power, and manipulation. The student, holding her aunt's hand, realized that even in victory, the world could be far more complicated than it seemed. The terminal slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Though the energy from the confrontation lingered in the air, passengers whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others clearly impressed by the CEO's calm and decisive handling of the situation. The student, still clutching her boarding pass, felt a mix of relief and newfound confidence. She realized that standing up, even when others seemed against her, could make a difference, especially with the right support. Her aunt guided her through security, explaining quietly that sometimes rules and systems are imperfect, and that knowing how to navigate them was just as important as following them. The student listened, absorbing lessons she hadn't expected to learn that day. The airline staff, meanwhile, returned to their duties with a new awareness. Having experienced firsthand the consequences of misunderstanding and rigid enforcement without empathy, as they reached the gate, the student looked back at the check-in counter one last time. Seeing the small crowd still murmuring about the incident, she smiled faintly, grateful for her aunt's intervention but also proud of herself for staying composed under pressure. Boarding the plane, she felt a renewed sense of courage, knowing that challenges could come unexpectedly, but with resilience, calm, and supo,